what's your parents' perception of that, and how does that conversation go? How do you even start to have that conversation?
Well, for me, it was a little difficult, because my my mom in particular is very grounded on her beliefs. It's very hard um to sort of convince her to have a different mindset on things because obviously we're part of a different generation. Back then, in the Dominican Republic, it wasn't like it is now. So it has been very challenging for me to try to shift her mentality and try to get her to see my way of thinking. It was never easy, but I think at the end of the day, my mom just really wants me to be happy with whatever it is that I'm doing, and
For
I
sure.
think, yeah, and I think I've earned a lot of her respect and confidence in just everything that I've done. I think she just believes that I know what I'm doing a lot more than she did years ago. So yeah, it is challenging to have those conversations and to sort of get her to understand a different perspective, but at the same time, uh, I've never been one to doubt myself or sort of go another route because someone else is telling me to. So yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, one thing that keeps coming up in like tough conversations is kind of there is this like ideal and the practical, and they do end up colliding. And depending on like where people sit on that side of the table,
Hmm.
it can be like a really valuable conversation, but it also can just be stressful. And
Right.
everybody can be right. So like my parents have always been really supportive of like you got to do they weren't really supported in terms of like do what you want to do. They sort of got the do something that makes economic sense. Like that was the message that they got a lot. And my parents were really tried to not do that with us. But
Right.
even when they say that, there's still practical things that kind of come into play. So like I said before, I for better or for worse, seem to move like very frequently. Like I don't think I've slept in one place for more than 6 months for like years now
He's
at
the
this
road
point.
man.
And that takes you away from people you care about, like it's
Yeah,
an
Yeah.
that's
amazing
true.
opportunity. And this is kind of like the opportunity cost part, right? Like
Mhm.
I've been able to like live in different countries and see the world and like see amazing places, but that all means that I'm not spend or I wasn't spending
Right.
time here. You miss stuff, you miss birthdays, you miss events, you miss gatherings, and so that's something that sort of like comes up as I don't know if a tension point, but sort of we when we sit down and say, okay, like I'm going to do grad school eventually. Say, oh, where? I say, I don't know, like the best program that accepts me. Like that's another conversation about me leaving again. So I think that that's like
Right.
sort of like a continual challenge, and they're supportive, but that doesn't mean it's not hard for me or for them.
Has that made anything more difficult during the old times of COVID? Like,
Um, to put it bluntly, I'm very salty that I'm back in Massachusetts for the first time in a while, and
yeah,
everything's
I
just
thought I
like
could feel
totally
that.
locked down. Not into it. Not super into that. Maybe
Blouses,
someday.
I have a quick question for you, man.
Mhm.
I feel like what you've done is not very conventional, We've always talked about it on a personal level, and you've always told me you're not the biggest fan of
Mhm.
standard 9 to 5s, right? You don't
No.
like being told what to do. You don't like working under someone. You like to be sort of in command of your own time and of your own opportunities. For me, I really respect that about you. I feel like you kind of took you have faith in yourself to be able to do what you're doing right now. But I'm also curious, what was the reception from not just your parents but from your friends when you told them like, oh, I'm still trying to figure out, if I want to do streaming, if I want to do podcasts, because obviously streaming is not really a lot of our parents don't even know what it is, don't understand the things that are involved in it, and may seem a little confused when you approach them with that. So can you talk about a little bit like your experiences and how it was going through that?
So I think there definitely is a generational gap. The older generation doesn't really understand the power of the internet, and just that there's so many more opportunities that are out there the convention of you have to be a lawyer, you have to be a doctor, you have to
Mhm.
be, I mean,
Astronaut.
was something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that type of world anymore, in my opinion. And sometimes you really just have to bet on yourself. And when
Mhm.
you know that you have a wonderful support system, then you just go with it. You run with it. You talk to who you need to talk to. You fill people in. Make sure to stay connected to that foundation. Make sure you tell your parents what you want to do. That was one of my biggest mistakes. I didn't tell my parents, hey, I'm really into this. I really like connecting with people. I really like imparting knowledge on people and sharing my perspective and hearing what other
Mhm.
people have to say and giving people a platform. Had I done that and had I shown like overt steps, had I shown like a plan, I think that would make things a little bit easier. That's what I've started to do recently, and it's been much received. My parents, shout out to them, huge shout out to them. I mean, without them, I wouldn't be before you today. I wouldn't have.
Literally.
I wouldn't have. Yeah, literally. Yeah, but I wouldn't have the ability. I wouldn't have the confidence. I wouldn't think that I could do whatever it is I set my mind to. That's one of
Right.
the things they really instilled in me, and it's one of the things that I questioned coming out of college. Like, what am I meant to do? There's so many different things that I've dabbled in, but what is it that's right for me? And I think now the pathway that they've set me up on, even though we had so many emotional talks last year this time, I really didn't think I would continue. I did not think that law school was for me. I really didn't have a good attitude about it. It definitely improved as time went on, especially with spring semester. But it's basically how can I use that to make my end goal of making things like this a reality and bringing Chopping It Up to everyone while keeping my parents intact with me and ensuring that I cover all my bases. So I'm not one to really enjoy being told what to do. It's one of the things that my
Mhm.
dad really instilled in me and my mom as well. Just don't put yourself in a situation where you have people that have no idea what they're doing and probably got there by questionable means telling you what to do. You have to be your own person. You have to do what's right. You have to work with people. You have to be cooperative, but never sell yourself short. Always bet on yourself. That's my MO, and that's what I live by.